Good everyone, in this video today we have a review on the B1 Ter. We're almost at the end of the starter pack tank reviews, and then we can crack on with the rest because I've got like another 10 after this and the Swedish tank. So the B1 Ter comes in as a pack, but also comes as a vehicle that you can buy separately. And personally, if you're looking for the best deal, I would personally just buy the pack, because then you get a plane with it. But just remember that the plane does uptier this thing to 2.7, and if you plan to use it alongside this thing, yeah, you're going to be fighting stuff which this tank will have no chance against. Let's put it that way. So the B1 Ter isn't that much different from the B1 Biz in the tech tree. There are a few minor differences, and of course there's the big one, which is the armour. Let's go over the B1 Biz first, and I can point out what I mean. You may ask about the jerry cans. Trust me, you'll be surprised how good that actually works. So the frontal armour of a B1 Biz is 60mm, whereas the B1 Ter is 70mm. Now there are a few extra flat spots, like just here near the gun and the driver's hatch, and of course up here isn't as angled. But you do have a little bit more curvature to protect the turret ring. The side armour is better than the B1 Biz, with the B1 Biz's side being 55, and this can be 70. But of course there are parts where it's weaker. And then there's this strip down here, which it's not very often shot here. And if you look, you need an APHE round to do it, so don't worry about that. The rear armour, however, doesn't change. It's 55mm thick. The top armour, however, it does have a pretty major weak spot. And you'll be surprised about the amount of planes that actually shoot here. With it only being 8mm, not only can it take out your loader, but it can also take out your machine gunner and potentially your commander. But also, it can take out your engine and set you on fire. Just bear that in mind, because trust me, it will be annoying. Now, of course, the turret armour doesn't change, and the main armament of both tanks do not change. The hull gun is the 75mm SA-35L17 cannon with 90 shots. I wouldn't carry too many, I'd say about 40 rounds, if that. You probably won't use this gun too much, it just depends on the situation. Also, unlike the B1 Biz, the B1 Ter does have a slight bit of traverse on this gun specifically. It's only about 7 degrees to either side, but it can make the difference, because the B1 Biz is fixed forward firing. This isn't. And of course, the main turret, I don't need to explain that. It's the same thing with the same coaxial machine gun. That's pretty self-explanatory. But just bear in mind, this top turret is extremely slow at turning, with just 9.3 degrees a second. But you do get negative 18 gun depression, which is pretty useful if you're shooting at lighter targets, and they try and get underneath your gun depression. However, don't expect to hit a locust when it's on your side, because they're just going to plink you all day long, and there isn't much you can do about that. But otherwise, it's not really much different to the B1 Biz. It's just, the thing is about the B1s is a lot of people call them seal clubbers, and yes, they are, but you cannot do it as effectively in a 3.3 match. If anything, it's even harder to do it in a 3.3 match. In a 3.3 match, you're going to be meeting tanks like the Panzer IV F2, the Panzer IV-G, which should never be 3.3 in the first place. I don't know why it's there, but clearly German mains just cry all day. And additionally, you're going to be meeting a lot of Russian stuff with the 76mm, and whilst that won't directly pen you, if it gets inside your tank, it will one-shot your ass back to the hangar before you can get a chance in what to do. Now, of course, the B1 Ter is about 4.5 tons heavier than the B1 Biz. So if you're driving this thing, it might feel a bit more like a sports car than this thing being like a truck, unfortunately. But for the vehicle itself and for the asking price, I believe it's 1,300 Golden Eagles. If you buy it separately, of course. This thing is a steal. But just remember, you're not going to be clubbing 24/7. You are going to face stuff that will absolutely clap your cheeks back to the hangar. And trust me, I've been on the receiving end of that many times, and it is not fun. Especially when you fight something like a Panzer IV-G at any distance greater than 500 meters, because you won't be doing shit, let's put it that way. Unless they angle their side armor and try to kill you that way, I don't know. But that's the only realistic way you're going to kill them. And given that the Panzer IV-G is being spammed right now, it's going to be very hard to play this tank. But don't worry, I do show you a 3.3 match, but this 3.3 match took place before the Panzer IV-G was down tiered to 3.3. So you won't see any of those this match, but I just figured I'd mention that anyway. So let's go into the replay and let's go take a look at the B1 Ter. Now, of course, as I did mention, this is a full up tier this match. However, I didn't really meet any tanks that would directly cause me any trouble, so to speak. There was a few, but I dealt with those rather adequately, and plus I stayed out of the way of the ones that I didn't really have much hope against. But that's just what I did to ensure the safety of my vehicle, because end of the day, when I'm looking for footage, I'm not particularly looking for much. I'm just looking for something that I can go, here's a good match, we'll use that. So in this match, I'm joined by Herifeet, I'm also joined by Astra, and I'm also joined by Forsaken Shadow. And of course, I'm in the B1 Ter. This is the only spawn I'm going to get this match, because I didn't die in this thing. And whilst it does get up to speed rather quickly, its top speed is only 18 miles an hour. It's not exactly a speed demon, but it's more than capable of getting into position rather adequately. So ignore the cringy ass sounds, because you know what, we're not going to use the fast forward. That is painful on my ears. I don't know how it is on your end, but my god, that hurt my ears. Point of note, do not use fast forward anymore. Jesus, that was a horrible sound. I don't know if it's just because I've got an old headset that I'm using, but Jesus, that sounded horrible. Anyway, so up here, the SDKFC 234 is currently having a bit of a bad day. He's got multiple tanks shooting at him, and this is where the enemy are going to start coming into the cab. Now, I fat fingered a 75 there, I'm not sure why, but I look to my right and make sure there's nothing coming, and that's a Sherman. Now, luckily, he's so kind to give me his side, but so is the T-28. I put a 75mm shell right through the front of the hull, 47 through the turret, and that one doesn't penetrate because of the coaxial machine gun, and that one didn't either. My squad mate actually killed that. I also get an assist on the Sherman, and that enables me to move up. And this is where around the corner there's something pretty funny. Let's put it that way. Come around the corner. 3 tanks. All 3 of them shoot. None of them pen. I killed the Chihi with a 47. The T-28 with a 75. So yeah, that was pretty funny to say the least, but even so, it just gives you an idea. And well, yeah, I killed a child there, as some might say, but it's fine. It's only a locust. This is where Astra makes a fatal mistake of giving his side to the enemy. I told him to give me his tow hook. Shadow tries to get in front of him to give him some extra armor, but it's not going to really work too well, and if I remember rightly, Astra is going to be destroyed later down the line, I should say. So moving on, I am kind of heading towards their spawn, but don't worry, I'm not going to be sticking around their spawn for long. All I'm going to do is clear out the tanks that are coming our way, potentially of course, because I can't really pen that guy at this distance. I tried a 75, even the 75 can't punch through him, so in a moment I soon come to the conclusion that I'm just wasting my time here and I should really go and find something else to kill. Which is what I eventually end up doing, because I'm just going to be plinking off that Hoai all day long at this distance, And no matter how hard I try, unless I hit a very unusual weak spot, I'm not killing it. But luckily our teammate in a Valentine does take him out. So that's at least something, but of course I didn't damage him, so I don't get an assist. I would use the fast forward at this point, but I am not using it after that noise, so yeah, that was horrible. Honestly, like, I've not heard a sound like that in ages. And here comes a M3A3 attempting a flank and spank. Well, I think we know who got spanked that time. Killed him before. And it's just... This thing is really fun, but like I say, the mobility does let it down in some areas. I mean, it's fine, but it would be nice if I could trade like 10mm of front armour, like on a B1 Biz, but keep the side armour, but just upgrade the engine to like 500 horsepower. That would be incredible if I could, but obviously you can't. And at that moment, I didn't spot the Zis-30 because he was in the bushes. But that time I did. I didn't know there was two of them until after I look over there. But my teammate is currently dealing with that. So at this point, Harry is being harassed by a tank destroyer, which is just up there, that Su-122. And at the minute, I'm trying to figure out a way to cross without getting into any, like, areas where I can't go through. Because obviously this is a very tall tank, but there are still parts of this map that you can't effectively ford, so to speak, if you've ever been through a river. So I have to be very careful about that. And this is another flaw of the B1 Ter, as you're going to see here. Going uphill is extremely slow, and the tracks have virtually no traction. And ever since the changes to the traction, it is very hard to effectively work. Teammate there takes out the Su-122, and now we can head over to the B point. This is quite a long battle, but it perfectly showcases what this tank can do. But I'm sorry to ask this of you because of how much gap there is. Cover your ears. There we go. Like I say, the new sound they put in for fast forwarding is fucking horrible, but yeah. I remember the truck over there with the 47mm, so that was quite handy. And he honestly thought he was going to pen a B1 Ter at that distance with a 25mm anti-tank, well, not anti-tank, anti-aircraft gun. It just ain't happening, son. And this is the moment where I spot an M10 coming down through the A Points River. And this is where it's going to get a bit annoying, because the M10 is another tank that you will meet a lot, and surprisingly enough, you will struggle to pen it most of the time. And as a result, it's now my duty, because Harry's just died to it, I have to deal with this thing. Now, the gun mantlet you can penetrate, and also the... I don't know what happened there with a replay. I also have to deal with this thing, but I barely have the pen to do it. That's the problem here. I can pen the M10, but I'd rather get it from the side where it's easier. But unfortunately, he's got his front to me. And there he is. And his 76 will cleave right through me. So the first objective is to take out that gun. Second objective, try and lob the commander a 47 in the face through the little slit of armour that's on top of the M10's turret. But, as you can tell, it's not really working out for me. And this is where I try to go again, but I miss, and as my gunner reloads, I get a shot right into the gunner of the M10, taking it out for kill number 7. And now I have Harry providing air support with his Focke-Wulf 189, but he also has two MiG-315s to deal with, which it isn't going to end very well for Harry. Anyway, once again, folks, I must ask you to cover your ears. Seriously, Gaijin, this just isn't funny. like I say, I'm terribly sorry for the noise, but that is Gaijin doing that. I have no control over the sound of the replay thing, so just bear that in mind. It's a horrible fucking sound, and I hate it, but I have to use it because, well, I don't really record my matches live unless I'm doing a series or anything. Reviews and stuff are all done by replays, so if you're new to the channel, I'm terribly apologetic for that, but hey, I didn't add the stupid sound, Gaijin did. So at this point, I'm able to cap the A point, and this is where we're going to meet our first proper 3.3 tank. And this is also where I do a spot of trolling with one of my subs. That is Forsaken Shadow up there. And, well, I felt like being a bit of a troll to him. He didn't appreciate it at first, but don't worry. I'm not just going to leave him there. The Panzer III decides to shoot me for having a bit of fun with my own squad mate. And now Shadow's currently screaming for me to come and help him because he's actually starting to suffer crew loss at this moment in time. And don't worry, Shadow will do that to me if he gets the chance. Now the Panzer III does decide to try and give a hand here, but he doesn't really have the torque like I do. And this is where I'm able to help Shadow by latching onto the correct track and just pull in. And eventually, after a little bit more help from the Panzer III, we are able to get Shadow back on his tracks. Don't worry, he gave me plenty of expletives for that. But that's the kind of banter we have with the guys on the Discord, and it's just really nice to have that, you know. So moving on, we are about to run into the M24 Chaffee. He's not going to appear for about another minute, but he is going to be to the left, and there's also T28E to the right, which he is going to be rather surprised at a B1 Ter slowly lumbering up the hill here, but he starts to panic, as you can imagine. Gives me his side, and quite easily I'm able to kill him. I don't know why the replay showed me hitting the bridge there, but I didn't. So that whilst the 47 reloads, I swung the gun round, but Shadow executed the Chaffee before I could kill him with a 75. But that isn't the only Chaffee we're going to be running into. And the Chaffee will really demonstrate just how poor these guns actually are in an up tier. And very soon, after making a brief section over to the B point to potentially cap it, we are going to turn back around and go to the cap at A because an M24 has gone there. Once again, folks, cover your ears. So at that moment, a T80 started to push the cap point, but there is also a Chaffee over to the left, which I have not seen yet because he's behind all the rocks. And me and this T80 are going to have a little duel, so to speak, and unfortunately, I drew Exodia in this regard. If you've not played Yu-Gi-Oh, you will not get that reference by a country mile, but I just figured I'd mention it. Unfortunately, the B1 Ter to this guy is like Exodia. You can't stop it, and even if you try to banish it, there will always be an Exodia card that will whoop your ass. So I went for the gun, but unfortunately, I only got the loader. And this is where the T80 starts to try and reverse into cover. I'm trying to get the shot in. I don't know how his crew member survived that, but I'm trying to put the shots in to the gunner's side. He fires again, doesn't aim, and just thinks he can lol pen everything with his Russian gun. And there we go. A B6N makes a bomb run at me, but misses by a country mile. And that gets me my 9th kill for the match. And once again... yes, he did just kamikaze me. We move back to the A point for one last tussle with the M24. Moving into the cap, Shadow notices it immediately, but just watch. Non-penetration. And yeah, whilst I did pen him, notice the cone of shrapnel there? Had he had more crew, that would have been quite a while for me to kill him. Let's put it that way. But when you've got Shadow with a 2-pounder, which can actually punch through the front of a M24, it's pretty useful to have. So like I said, this tank is very fun. However, I would personally suggest getting something like the AMX-13 M24 if you're looking for something a little bit more big, like, shall we say, capable in an up tier. Like this tank can do some work, but I personally advise that you will not only get the AMX over this, however, the AMX costs more, and if you're looking for something that can really bring the money in, so to speak, get the French starter pack. That's the best way, because I wouldn't recommend buying a B1 Ter separate. I'd just get the pack, and even if you don't use the plane, there are plenty of 2.3 CAS options for France. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's review on the B1 Ter, and I'll catch you all on the next one.